Okay, today we are doing a first read of a poem. Yesterday we took notes on poetry elements. I want to give you guys 3 minutes to review those notes, read over them. I'm going to ask a couple questions. I'm going to give you right now 3 minutes to read over your study, or not your study things, but your notebooks. Look at those notes from yesterday. Our poem we're going to be reading will be on page 91 of the study sinks. Just another minute. And then was I reading my notes? Go back to poetic elements and take a look. Okay, that's enough time. Who can tell me what some of our poetic elements are that we took notes on yesterday? Was it? Okay, so alliteration. What is alliteration? Repetition of consonants. Very good. Yes. So when you have the repeating sounds, Perla, let's hurry up, please. Sit down. I'm not even getting in your backpack right now. Yes, it is a repetition of consonants. So when you have the same sound over and over again, like I said yesterday, Peter Piper picked a bag of pickled peppers, that P sound repeating. What's it called when you have a repetition of vowels? Assonance, yes. So that's when you have something else like surf and turf. That repetition of a vowel sound. You also have other elements. You have metaphors. What else do we have other than metaphors? Similes, imagery, things like that. Those are all poetic elements. So we're going to see how they interact in a poem to help us understand a poem better. So on page 91, take a look at this first page here. It's called Oranges. It's from 1995 by Gary Soto. Take a look at that picture. I just want you to make one prediction about what you think this poem is going to be about based off of the title and the picture. There's no wrong answers. This is just you making an assumption about what you think the poem's going to be about. So take just a minute and make one prediction and write it down on that page. will be a quiz on this first read tomorrow. Everything we talk about today will be very important and could possibly be on that quiz, so I want everybody paying attention. All right, do I have any volunteers for their predictions? What they think it's going to be about? Estrella, what'd you write down?
From the picture, I feel like it's gonna be like about a relationship.
A relationship, because we have kids holding hands, like that. Anybody else? Marley?
His first love.
First love, what makes you think that?
Cause I read it.
You read the introduction, you got ahead of the game? All right, yes. If we look at the introduction here, it says, Gary Soto is an award-winning Mexican-American author of poetry, children's books, memoirs, and plays, whose work is largely inspired by his experiences growing up among migrant farm workers in California's Central Valley. So that's where we live. We live in the Central Valley. Of his poetry, author Joyce Carol Oates has said, Gary Soto's poems are fast, funny, heartening, and achingly believable, like Polaroid love letters or snatches of music heard out of a passing car. Patches of beauty, like patches of sunlight, the very pulse of a life. The poem here, Oranges, reflects on emotions of first love. So yes, it is about children's first love. I'm gonna play a very short video here before we read the poem. So let's all watch and pay attention.
A cold December day. A boy walks down a frost-covered street. He is hand in hand with a girl. His first time, he's nervous. The details of this day live on in this boy's memory. The barking dog, the walk home, and even the snack in his pocket. What is it like to look back on a first love? How did this memory endure for poet Gary Soto? Find out. Read Oranges by Gary Soto.
Okay, so there's our introduction. Now if we go to the next page. Go to the next page, page 92. What we're going to do, I'm going to read through the first time without doing anything. But first, things that you will be looking for to highlight, and you're going to pay attention for, are key details. But with key details, poetry is a little different than with stories, like last time. So this one, I want you to pay attention for imagery, anything to do with the five senses. Does anybody tell me what our five senses are? Touch, smell,
Here.
sound, taste, sight. Yes. So you're looking for anything related to the five senses. There are also going to be some characters and setting. I want you to try to figure out what the setting is. And then every 10 lines, we're going to break every 10 lines. So every 10 lines is where we're going to stop. And I want you to try to visualize what is going on. Every 10 lines we're going to visualize. And then obviously, what we always do, we define a bold vocabulary. So those are what we're going to be doing here. So I'm going to read through it just straight through. I want you guys just to listen, pay attention, see if you see any of these things, and then we will do a second reading of analyzing it. The first time I walked with a girl, I was 12. Cold and weighted down with 2 oranges in my jacket. December frost crackling, beneath my steps, my breath before we had been gone. As I walked toward her house, the one whose porch light burned yellow. Night and day, in any weather, a dog barked at me until she came out pulling at her gloves, face bright with rouge. I smiled, touched her shoulder, and led her down the street, across a used car lot and a line of newly painted trees. Until we were breathing before a drugstore, we entered the tiny bell bringing a sales lady down a narrow aisle of goods. I turned to the candles, tiered like bleachers, and asked what she wanted. Light in her eyes, a smile starting at the corners of her mouth. I fingered a nickel in my pocket, and when she lifted a chocolate that cost a dime, I didn't say anything. I took the nickel from my pocket, then an orange, and set them quietly on the counter. When I looked up, the lady's eyes met mine, and held them, knowing very well what it was all about. Outside, a few cars hissing past, fog hanging like old coats between the trees. I took my girl's hand in mine for 2 blocks, then released it to let her unwrap the chocolate. I peeled my orange that was so bright against the gray of December that from some distance someone might have thought I was making a fire in my hands. Did anybody see any of these elements just right off?
Yeah.
Yeah, you saw a few things? Let's take a look. Let's start from the beginning. So we're going to do the first 10 lines. So we're going to stop right here. So I have a volunteer to read those first 10 lines. Go ahead, Isabella.
The first time I walked with the girl, I was 12. Both way down with 2 inches in my jacket. December frost cracking beneath my steps. My breath was always kind of before me then gone. As I walked towards her house, the one whose porch light burned yellow. Okay.
The one whose porch light burned yellow, yes. So in there, first thing we have is that vocab. Sammy, please face forward. First thing we have is that first word to define, waited. Without looking it up or anything, let's see if we can figure out what it means. It says, the first time I walked with a girl, I was 12, cold and weighted down with 2 oranges in my jacket.
I mean, like, the oranges were pretty, they're heavy. Yeah, they're heavy.
They were heavy, yes. They were weighing him down. Very good. So you can tell just by that. You can write, I'm going to let you pick out your own definition of however you want to define weighted. But yes, imagine having your jacket with 2 oranges in it, and it's pulling your jacket down. That's what it's being weighed down. So just write yourself a quick little definition in your own words. When you're done, put your pencil down so I know you are done. All right, we have a couple other things in those first 10 lines. Does anybody see setting? Setting. Her house. Where's her house?
Front porch.
Front porch, okay. Very good. What about in line 5 there? Does that also give us part of
December.
Very good, yes. So highlight anything you see with setting and label it. So yes, December frost crackling, that gives us setting right there. So what's the weather going to be like right now? Cold. But then there's that last line, line 10. Porch light burned yellow. How does that make us feel? Hmm? Like it's night? Okay. What does that color? What about that color? Burned yellow. What does that feel? Like warm, right? Like it gives you a sense of warmth. So yes, there's a couple things in here that even though it's cold and wintry, it makes you feel warm. And that's one of them. So where it says, porch light burned yellow, that gives us a sense of warmth. Do I have a volunteer for the next 10 lines? I can call on, go ahead, Melissa.
Night and day in any weather, a dog barked until she came out pulling her gloves, face bright with a rug. I smiled, touched her shoulder, and led her down the street across a used car lot and a line of newly planted trees until we were breathing.
Very good, thank you. So, first, we have that color, or that word rouge right there. Another word to define, rouge. Before I define, does anybody already know what that means? No? Alright, so let's look at it. So it says, she came out pulling at her gloves, so you can picture her pulling at her gloves, right? I smiled, touched her, pulling at her gloves, face bright with rouge. So imagine a face, and it's bright with something on her face, right? So what do you put on your face?
Cream.
Kind of like lotion, but what else?
Cream.
Cream, sunscreen.
Water.
What do adult women put on their faces?
Makeup.
Makeup. Rouge is a type of makeup. So it is red makeup used on cheeks. Even the word rouge means red. Red makeup used on cheeks.
I can't see what you're spelling.
I'll move it so you can. Red makeup used on cheeks.
Red makeup, what does that say?
Red
Red
makeup
makeup.
used on cheeks. And then if we keep reading there. I smiled, touched her shoulder, and led her down the street. How do you think he feels about her? He likes her, right? So there you go. We already know he likes her. So there's, yeah. So they're kind of on a date. So right there, that gives you evidence. He likes spending time with her. I smiled, touched her shoulder, and walked her down the street. So we know this boy likes this girl. Alright, I'll give you guys a break and I will read the next 10 lines. Until we were breathing before a drugstore, we entered the tiny bell bringing a sales lady down a narrow aisle of goods. I turned to the candles, tiered like bleachers, and asked what she wanted. Light in her eyes, a smile starting at the corners of her mouth. So I'm gonna stop right there. We have a couple of words to define. Tiered and bleachers. You have to define tiered and then bleachers. think most of you probably know what bleachers are, right?
Like where you sit.
Yeah, so yes, in a stadium, they're the seats that you sit at. When you look at them, how are they set up?
Like in a row.
In rows, but they go up, right? They're kind of stacked. So when this says, so you already know what bleachers are, so you can define that. You can write down a quick little definition of your own for what bleachers are, since you already know what that is. And then for tiered, because we know what bleachers are, we can figure out what tiered is. It says, I turned to the candles, tiered like bleachers. So what do we think?
Stack of wax candles.
So you said, so you have wax candles and they're kind of stacked up? Yeah, exactly. So tiered is stacked, right? So what I would say for tiered, I would say having a series of levels placed one above the other. Now we're on the next page here. So, I'm going to call a stick for somebody to read for me. You're going to read from where it says, where I stopped, right here at I fingered. You're going to start right there. And you're going to read all the way down to line 42 where it says about. Lily.
I fingered a nickel in my pocket, and when she lifted up a chocolate across the dime, I didn't say anything. I took the nickel from my pocket, then an orange, and set them quietly on the counter. When I looked up, the lady's eyes met mine and held them, knowing very well what it was all about.
Very good, thank you. So that last line, that last question there, or that question, but knowing very well what it was all about. Do we know what that means? Well, what do you think?
That she knew that my dog was going to stay and she was just going to come.
Okay, very good. So yeah, you're right on track there. So if we look at this. I fingered a nickel in my pocket, so we know he only has a nickel. And when she lifted a chocolate that cost a dime, so the girl wanted a chocolate, but it cost more than what he had, right? I didn't say anything. I took the nickel from my pocket, then an orange. So he has his nickel, he has an orange. And set them quietly on the counter. When I looked up, the lady's eyes met mine and held them, knowing very well what it was all about. So what do we think he's hoping she will do with that orange? Yeah, that he's gonna use it as money as well, right? Because he doesn't have enough to buy the chocolate, so he's hoping that she'll take the other orange as another nickel. And from there, do we think she's going to? Yeah, we do. So that whole section right there, right here, you can make an inference. That's what that is. We just inferred what they were talking about. That is where we just made an inference. We didn't know exactly what was being said, but we figured it out. I'm going to read that last section. So in this section, you're gonna have some more setting. You're going to have a piece of figurative language. And then we're going to have another sense of warmth, like we did earlier with, what was it, the porch light burning yellow. I wanted to see if you guys can figure them all out. Outside, a few cars hissing past, fog hanging like old coats between the trees. I took my girl's hand in mine for 2 blocks, then released it to let her unwrap the chocolate. I peeled my orange that was so bright against the gray of December that from some distance, someone might have thought I was making a fire in my hands. First, we have one last full word there to define. I'm sure some of you already know what this means. Hissing. Anybody know what hissing is?
Like, is it the little noise?
It's a noise. Yes, so it's like a s sound, right?
The cat does it.
Or hissing, yeah, a cat hisses. So do snakes. So yes, so it's a sound it's that S sound. Kind of hard to, let's see, how would I want to write this? So I'd say, yeah, I just say kind of like a repeating S sound, right?
A noise that comes from something?
Yeah, a noise that can come from, like a noise a snake makes. I'm going to say a sharp sound like that of an S. A sharp sound like that of an S. And I'm gonna write in parentheses, sound a snake makes. So I know what it's talking about. Does anybody think they figured out what the figurative language was? I'll give you a hint. It's a simile. Now the first person to find the simile gets some gummies. Huh?
Okay, we got a lock in there.
Get them to you before you go to lunch.
Wait,
It's a simile. You're looking for a simile. What is a simile?
it's
Like a rhyming word.
It's not rhyming.
The opposite
You
one.
compare, but what do you compare using? You compare two things.
Using like as.
Yeah, so who's gonna find it?
using light grass. So wait, what do we have to find though?
Simile. The figurative language in that section.
Is it like trying to
Oh wait. Is it tiered like bleachers?
No, it's in this section right here.
Oh.
Oh.
Melissa, you got it?
Wait, frog hanging like old tree, like old coats between the trees.
There you go. She found it. Fog hanging like old coats between the trees. There is your figurative language. That is a simile. You're comparing two things that are not the same, using like or as. And also that can kind of give you a sense of setting, right? Because of the fog. That word fog right there. Also, that also contributes to the setting. And then did anybody find the other thing that I said was creating a sense of warmth?
Where is that one located?
It's in this section too.
I closed my eyes, I was so out against the gray of
No.
Is it the last?
Harvey found it. I was making a fire in my hands. fire in my hands. Also gives you a sense of warmth. So now, because we've been doing this all with everything we've been working on, I want you to write down, oops, the author's purpose. What is the author's purpose of this poem? So I want you to write down the author's purpose, and then I want your 2-sentence summary of what the poem is about.
We don't have that.
Hmm?
I want those enough.
Give it to you before lunch. So just 2 sentences of what the story is about at the bottom, your summary.